The last light of Route 66. The diner stood where it always had, just off the frontage road, its neon sign flickering between life and surrender, as if unsure whether it still belonged to this century. The word "eats" buzzed faintly in the afternoon light. Thomas Whitaker noticed it first. He stood beside his car longer than necessary, one hand resting on the roof, feeling the heat that had gathered there under the Arizona sun. The metal was almost too warm to touch, but he didn't move. There was something grounding in it, the certainty of temperature, of surface, of something still obeying simple rules. Unlike memory, the wind carried dust across the empty parking lot in thin, restless sheets. Somewhere in the distance, a truck groaned along the highway, its sound stretching and thinning until it became indistinguishable from the wind itself. Tom adjusted his jacket, too formal for this place, he knew, and finally walked toward the diner. Inside, the air was cooler, but not fresh. It held the scent of old coffee, worn vinyl, and something faintly sweet, like syrup, that had soaked into the wood decades ago and never fully left. The place was nearly empty. A waitress wiped down a counter that was already clean. A radio played something soft and distant, an old country song, the kind that didn't demand attention, only filled silence, and there, in the far booth by the window, sat Raymond Collins. Ray looked smaller, not in any obvious way. He still had his broad shoulders, still held himself with that same careless posture, but time had thinned something essential in him, like a song played too many times, worn down in the quieter notes. He looked up as Tom approached. For a moment, neither of them smiled. Then Ray did. Tom. Just that. No surprise, no performance. Tom nodded, sliding into the booth across from him. Ray. A pause followed. Not awkward, not yet, just unfamiliar. Ray gestured toward the window with his coffee cup. Still the same view. Tom glanced outside. The road stretched out in a pale ribbon, the horizon wavering in heat. A gas station stood across the way, closed, its pumps wrapped in plastic like something preserved rather than abandoned. Yeah, Tom said, still pretending it's going somewhere. Ray huffed a quiet laugh. For a while they said nothing. It wasn't silence exactly. The radio filled the edges. The waitress moved dishes somewhere behind them. A chair scraped softly against the floor. But between them there was a space that hadn't yet decided what it was. Ray leaned back, studying Tom with an openness that bordered on intrusion. You look older, he said. Tom raised an eyebrow. That's usually how it works. No. Ray shook his head slightly. I mean, different kind of older. Tom considered that. Yeah, he said finally. I suppose. Ray nodded, as if that confirmed something he hadn't fully articulated. The door opened again. A gust of hot air pushed into the diner ahead of Daniel Brooks, who stepped inside with the solid, grounded presence of someone who had spent most of his life fixing things that broke. Danny paused just inside, scanning the room. His eyes landed on them, and for a brief second something like hesitation crossed his face. Then it vanished, replaced by a familiar half-smile. Well, he said, walking over. Look at that. Tom stood. So did Ray. The three of them hovered there awkwardly, caught between a handshake and something more. In the end, they settled for brief, uneven embraces, shoulders touching, backs patted, each contact just a second too short to be fully sincere, and yet not insincere either. Danny slid into the booth beside Ray. Place hasn't changed, he said, echoing what had already been said, as if that repetition was necessary. "It has," Tom replied, "just not in ways you can see." Danny glanced at him, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, that sounds about right." The waitress approached, took Danny's order without writing it down, then disappeared again. Another pause. Then Danny leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice, not because anyone might hear, but because the moment seemed to require it. "You heard from Vic?" Ray shook his head. "Not yet." Tom looked toward the door, though there was no reason to expect it to open. "He said he'd be here," Tom said. Danny shrugged. "Vic always says a lot of things, but there was no bite in it. Just an old familiarity, worn smooth over years." Outside, the light shifted almost imperceptibly, the kind of change you only noticed if you'd been watching long enough. Time moving, whether anyone was ready or not. The door opened again. This time it was Victor Alvarez. He stood in the doorway for a moment, silhouetted against the brightness outside, taller than the others remembered, or maybe just straighter, more rigid. He stepped in, letting the door close behind him with a soft, final sound. His gaze found them immediately, and something passed between the four men in that instant. Something unspoken, but undeniable, not just recognition. History. Vic walked over. No smile this time. "Been a while," he said. "Yeah," Ray answered quietly. "Too long." Vic nodded once, then slid into the booth across from Danny, beside Tom. The four of them sat there, arranged like points on a compass, each facing something slightly different, yet all part of the same circle. No one spoke. The radio crackled softly. Outside, the road waited. It had always waited. Tom looked at each of them in turn. The lines on their faces, the small, almost invisible ways they carried themselves now, the weight of years not just lived, but accumulated. He felt it then, not nostalgia, something sharper, a sense that this moment was not simply a meeting, but a beginning, or an ending. He wasn't sure which. Ray tapped his fingers lightly against his coffee cup. Danny exhaled slowly. Vic looked out the window, and somewhere far down the road, something unseen shifted, like a memory stirring just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise. The coffee cooled faster than anyone noticed. It sat in thick ceramic cups, untouched between sips that never quite came, the surface dark and still, like something waiting to be disturbed. Outside, the afternoon had begun its slow descent. The light softened, stretching shadows longer across the empty lot, turning ordinary objects into quieter versions of themselves. Inside the booth, the four men remained suspended in a moment that had not yet decided what it would become. Ray broke it first. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table, fingers loosely interlocked. There was something deliberate in the movement, as if he had rehearsed it, not physically, but somewhere deeper. "I didn't ask you all here just to catch up," he said. Tom's gaze shifted to him, steady, attentive. Danny looked down at his hands. Vic didn't move at all. Ray let the silence settle after his words, giving them time to land, to take shape. "I've been thinking," he continued, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent that hadn't been there before, "about what's left." Tom's brow tightened slightly. "That's a broad category." Ray smiled faintly. "It used to be." A faint hum from the refrigerator behind the counter filled the space between them. Danny finally looked up. "What are you getting at, Ray?" Ray exhaled slowly, as if releasing something he'd been holding on to for longer than he wanted to admit. "I want us to take a trip." No one reacted immediately. The words were simple, almost casual, but they carried weight. too much for something so ordinary. Tom leaned back slightly, studying Ray. A trip? Yeah. Where? Ray's eyes drifted toward the window, toward the road. Route 66. That did something. It wasn't visible at first. No sudden movements, no sharp expressions, but something shifted in each of them. A tightening, a subtle recalibration of thought. Danny let out a quiet breath through his nose. You're serious? Ray nodded. Tom's voice was measured. Why now? Ray didn't answer right away. He watched a car pass on the distant highway, its motion smooth, uninterrupted, already gone by the time he spoke. Because we never finished it. That landed heavier than anything he'd said so far. Vic's eyes flickered just once. Tom folded his hands on the table. We finished it enough. Ray shook his head. No, we didn't. Danny shifted in his seat. That was, what, 40 years ago? 42, Vic said quietly. They all looked at him. He hadn't taken his eyes off the window. Ray gave a small nod. 42. Danny leaned back, crossing his arms. That's a long time to hold on to something like that. Ray turned to him. Pardon. Some things don't really care how long it's been. A faint tension began to form, not sharp, not confrontational, but present, like pressure building beneath a surface that still appeared calm. Tom spoke carefully. You're talking about a road trip. At our age. Ray met his gaze. I'm talking about finishing something we left unfinished. Tom held that look for a moment longer than necessary. People leave things unfinished all the time, he said. That's part of life. Ray nodded slowly. Yeah, it is. Another pause, then softer. Doesn't mean it sits right. The words lingered. Danny rubbed his jaw, eyes drifting toward the counter, toward nothing in particular. And what? He said. You think driving across the country is going to fix that? Ray didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached for his coffee, took a small sip, then set the cup back down with careful precision. No, he said, I don't think it fixes anything. He looked at each of them in turn. But I think it lets you look at it properly. Something in that phrasing settled differently. Not hopeful, not naive, just honest. Vic finally turned from the window. You picked the route already? He asked. Ray's eyes sharpened slightly, as if recognizing the first real step toward agreement. Chicago to Santa Monica, he said, the full stretch, or as much of it as still exists. Vic nodded once. Parts of it don't. I know. Another silence, but this one had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was working. Tom exhaled quietly. This isn't just about nostalgia, is it? Ray hesitated, just long enough. No, he said. That was enough. Danny looked between them, something unsettled rising behind his eyes. We're not the same people we were back then, he said. No, Tom agreed. We're not. Ray leaned back slightly, his expression softening, not into comfort, but into something more fragile. That's kind of the point. The radio shifted to another song, slower, older, the kind that carried memory in its melody, even if you couldn't place where you'd heard it before. Outside, the sky had begun to change colour, faint gold bleeding into pale blue. Tom stared at the table for a moment, tracing a barely visible scratch in the wood with his eyes. 42 years, a road they had started, a road they had not finished, a reason, never fully spoken. He looked up. And how long? He asked. Ray didn't hesitate this time. As long as it takes. Danny let out a short, almost disbelieving laugh. That's not an answer. It's the only one that makes sense. Vic shifted slightly, his posture straightening just enough to signal a decision forming. "When do we leave?" he asked. Danny turned to him. "You're already in?" Vic didn't look at him. "I didn't say that. But you're asking." Vic's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm considering." Ray watched him carefully. "Tomorrow," Ray said. That caught them. "All of us?" Tom asked. "Yes, that's sudden." Ray gave a faint shrug. "So is time." Danny shook his head, but there was less resistance in it now. "You always were like this," he muttered. "Just decide something and expect the rest of us to fall in line." Ray smiled faintly. "You never had to." Danny looked at him for a long moment, then looked away. Tom leaned back, his gaze drifting once more toward the window. The road stretched out, quiet, indifferent, unfinished. He felt something shift inside him, not excitement, not exactly. Something more complicated, a pull, or maybe a release. "All right," Tom said quietly. 3 heads turned toward him. "We go," he continued. We finish it." Ray didn't smile this time. He just nodded. Danny closed his eyes briefly, then exhaled. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, all right." Vic gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, and just like that, it was decided. No grand declaration, no moment of triumph. Just 4 men, sitting in a quiet diner, agreeing to step back into something they had once left behind. Outside, the light continued to fade. The road waited as it always had, but now it was no longer just waiting. It was calling. Morning came quietly, not with the urgency it once had, not with alarms or obligations, but with a slow, patient unfolding of light across the desert sky. Pale blue at first, then soft gold, spreading like something remembered rather than newly made. The parking lot of the motel, if it could still be called that, lay half empty and silent. A row of doors, faded to a colour that might once have been turquoise, faced the road. Paint peeled in long curling strips. The ice machine hummed in uneven intervals, as though it had developed a rhythm of its own over the years. Tom stood outside his room, watching the horizon. He had slept, but not deeply, the kind of sleep that drifts near the surface, where thoughts never fully dissolve. Faces had come and gone in the night. His wife, younger versions of the men he was about to travel with, places that no longer existed except in memory. He adjusted his watch, though the time didn't matter yet. Behind him, a door opened. Danny stepped out, stretching his arms overhead, his joints protesting audibly in the still morning air. "Forgot how quiet it gets out here," he muttered. Tom nodded. "It's not quiet." Danny glanced at him. "No." Tom looked toward the road. "It just sounds like it is." Danny followed his gaze, but didn't respond. After a moment, he lowered his arms and leaned against the railing. "You ready for this?" he asked. Tom took a breath. "No," he said. Danny smiled faintly. "Yeah, me neither." Another door opened. Ray emerged more slowly. One hand braced against the frame for just a fraction of a second too long before he stepped fully outside. He straightened, smoothing his shirt as if nothing had happened. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Tom and Danny answered. Ray looked at them, then at the sky. "Feels different," he said. Danny snorted lightly. "It's morning, Ray." Ray shook his head. "No, I mean this." He gestured vaguely at the road, the motel, the air itself. Tom watched him carefully. "How?" Tom asked. Ray hesitated. "Like something's already started," he said. No one replied to that. Vic's door opened last. He stepped out with the same measured precision he seemed to bring to everything, fully dressed, composed, already carrying a small duffel bag. He locked the door behind him, tested the handle once, then turned toward the others. "Car's ready," he said. Of course it was. Vic had insisted on driving. Not just any car either. A 1968 Chevrolet Impala. It sat in the lot like a memory made solid, long, low, its dark body catching the early light in muted reflections. Not restored to perfection, but maintained with care. The kind of care that suggests respect, not vanity. Danny let out a low whistle. "You weren't kidding." Vic shrugged slightly. "Still runs." Ray walked over, running his hand lightly along the hood. "Feels like we're stealing time," he said. Vic didn't respond. Tom approached more slowly, taking in the details, the chrome, the faint imperfections, the way the car seemed both present and slightly out of place, as if it had carried its own past with it into this morning. "Where do you find it?" Tom asked. "Didn't," Vic said. "Kept it." That explained something. Danny loaded a bag into the trunk. "You always were like that," he said, holding on to things. Vic closed the trunk with a firm final motion. "Some things are worth holding on to." Ray glanced at him, but didn't press. They settled into the car with an unspoken understanding of positions, Vic driving, Tom in the passenger seat, Danny and Ray in the back. The doors shut one by one, each with a solid mechanical certainty that felt almost reassuring. For a moment no one moved. Then Vic turned the key. The engine came alive with a low, steady rumble, not loud, not aggressive, but present, like something waking up that had never quite gone to sleep. Danny leaned back, exhaling. "All right," he said. "Guess we're doing this." No one answered. Vic shifted into gear. The car rolled forward, gravel crunching beneath the tires, then eased onto the road. And just like that, they were moving. The first miles passed without conversation. The road stretched ahead in long, uninterrupted lines, the landscape unfolding in wide open expanses of desert and sky. Telephone poles marched alongside them, evenly spaced, disappearing into the distance with quiet persistence. Tom watched the horizon. It seemed farther away than it should have been. Or maybe it was exactly where it had always been, and he was only now noticing the distance. Behind him, Ray rested his head lightly against the seat, eyes half closed, not sleeping, just listening to the engine, to the road, to something internal that no one else could hear. Danny shifted occasionally, adjusting his position, looking out the window, then forward again. Restless but contained. Vic drove, steady, focused, hands firm on the wheel. They passed an old gas station, boarded up, its sign tilted at an angle that suggested it had given up resisting gravity years ago. Ray opened his eyes. "Remember that one?" he asked. Danny leaned forward slightly, squinting. Hard to tell. They all start to look the same after a while. Ray shook his head. "No, not that one." Tom glanced in the side mirror as the station receded behind them. "What do you remember?" he asked. Ray didn't answer immediately. He watched the road ahead, as if waiting for the right version of the memory to surface. "A night," he said finally. "We stopped somewhere like that." Could have been that one. Danny frowned slightly. "We stopped a lot of places." "Yeah," Ray said. "We did." Something in his tone suggested more, but he didn't continue. The car moved on. By late morning the light had changed again. Stronger now, more direct, flattening shadows and sharpening edges. The road curved gently, then straightened. A sign appeared ahead, Route 66, historic. The paint was chipped, the edges worn. Vic slowed slightly as they passed it. No one commented, but each of them noticed. Tom felt it, a subtle shift, almost imperceptible, but real, not in the road, in himself, as if crossing that invisible line had moved them not just forward in space, but backward in time, or inward. He couldn't quite place it. Danny cleared his throat. "So," he said, "anyone got a plan? Or are we just driving until something happens?" Ray smiled faintly. "Something always happens." Danny glanced at him. "That's not reassuring." Vic's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Tom noticed. "Let's just take it as it comes," Tom said. "One stretch at a time." Danny nodded. "Yeah." "All right." Silence returned, but it had changed. It was no longer empty. It carried something now. Expectation, or maybe recognition. Around noon the heat settled in fully. The air outside shimmered. The road ahead wavered slightly, bending light into subtle distortions that made distance difficult to judge. Vic turned off onto a narrower stretch of road, older, less maintained. The asphalt darkened, cracked in places, lines faded or gone entirely. "You sure this is it?" Danny asked. Vic nodded. "Original route." Ray leaned forward slightly. "Feels like it." Tom looked around. The landscape here was different. Not dramatically, but enough. The silence deeper, the space between structures wider. They passed a row of abandoned buildings, once a small town perhaps, now just shapes against the horizon. A sign half buried in sand leaned at an angle. The lettering had mostly worn away, but one word remained. "Welcome," no indication to where, or from when. Ray watched it pass, his expression tightening just slightly. "You ever get the feeling," he said slowly, "that places remember things?" Danny shifted. "Places don't remember, Ray. People do." Ray didn't look at him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Maybe." Vic said nothing. Tom felt it again, that subtle, almost unnameable shift. The road stretched ahead, empty, the sky vast and indifferent, and somewhere just beneath the surface of the moment, something had begun to stir. Not loudly, not clearly, but unmistakably. They drove on, and the further they went, the less it felt like they were simply travelling forward. By early afternoon the light had hardened. The sky stretched wide and unbroken, a pale, relentless blue. The sun pressed down on the road with quiet insistence, flattening colour, bleaching detail, turning everything into variations of dust and heat. Inside the car, the air was cooler, but carried the faint scent of old upholstery warmed by decades of summers. They had been driving for hours, long enough for the rhythm of the road to settle into their bodies, long enough for thoughts to loosen from the present and drift elsewhere. Tom rested his elbow against the door, fingers lightly touching the glass. It vibrated subtly with the motion of the car, steady, constant, almost hypnotic. He had stopped trying to measure distance. It didn't feel relevant anymore. Behind him, Ray leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed not on the road ahead, but somewhere just beyond it, as if watching something that wasn't entirely there. "You remember the map?" Ray asked quietly. Danny shifted in the back seat. "What map?" "The one we had back then," Ray said. "Folded paper, took up half the dashboard." Danny let out a faint chuckle. "Everything was paper back then." Ray smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, but that one. We marked it. Tom glanced toward the windshield, though he wasn't really looking at the road anymore. I remember, he said. Vic's grip on the wheel remained steady, but his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. Danny frowned slightly. Marked it how? Ray traced an invisible line in the air with his finger. Stops, places we'd been, places we were supposed to go. Supposed to, Danny repeated. Ray didn't respond. The car moved through a stretch of road that seemed to narrow, not physically, but in feeling. The space around them opened wider, emptier, fewer signs of life, fewer interruptions. Tom watched a distant structure pass by. Just a frame now, its roof long gone, its purpose erased by time. We never made it to the end, Tom said. It wasn't a question. Danny shifted again. We made it far enough. Ray shook his head slowly. That's not the same thing. A low hum filled the car, the engine, the tires against the road, the quiet friction of movement. Vic adjusted his hands on the wheel. We turned back, he said. His voice was even, controlled. Ray leaned back slightly. Yeah, Danny looked between them. We had a reason. Silence, the kind that doesn't arrive suddenly, but grows, filling space gradually, pressing against the edges of conversation until there's nowhere else for it to go. Tom felt it settle in his chest, a memory not yet clear, but present. We never really talked about it, Tom said. Danny's jaw tightened. Didn't seem like something we needed to talk about. Ray let out a soft breath. That's the problem with things you don't talk about. Vic's eyes stayed on the road. They don't go away, Ray added. The road curved gently to the left. For a moment, the sun caught the windshield at just the right angle, flooding the interior with a brief, blinding wash of light. Tom blinked, and for a fraction of a second, the road looked different, narrower, darker, younger. He inhaled sharply, the image already slipping away. Tom, Danny said. Tom shook his head slightly. Just the light, but something lingered, not the image itself. The feeling of it. They drove on. The land shifted subtly, low hills rising in the distance, the colour of the earth deepening from pale dust to something richer, redder. A sign appeared ahead. Faded, leaning, motel, vacancy. The arrow pointed down a side road, barely visible from the main stretch. Vic slowed. Want to stop? He asked. No one answered immediately. Then Ray said, Yeah. Vic turned the wheel. The road to the motel was rough, uneven. Gravel gave way to cracked asphalt, then back again, as if the place had been abandoned in stages. The building came into view slowly. Single-story, L-shaped, rooms lined up in a row, doors identical, windows shaded by curtains that hadn't been drawn in years, or perhaps had never been opened since they were. The sign out front creaked slightly in the wind. Sunset Palms. Only a few of the letters still lit, though it was too early in the day for them to matter. Vic parked the car. The engine fell silent. And with it, something else became noticeable. The absence of sound. No traffic, no voices, just wind, moving lightly across the open space, brushing against the edges of things. Danny opened the door first, stepping out and stretching again. Place looks familiar, he said. Ray stepped out more slowly. It is, he said. Tom turned toward him. You're sure? Ray nodded. I've been here before. Vic closed his door, the sound sharper than it needed to be. So have we, he said. That settled it. Not as confirmation, as recognition. They stood there for a moment, all four of them, facing the building. The motel didn't look abandoned. Not exactly. It looked paused, as if something had been happening there once, and might again, if given the chance. Tom walked a few steps forward, gravel crunching beneath his shoes. He ran his hand along the railing outside the rooms. The metal was warm, rough in places where paint had peeled away. Danny approached one of the doors, peering through the small gap in the curtain. "Hard to see anything," he muttered. Ray moved past him, stopping at a different door. Number 6. He stared at it longer than the others had looked at anything since they arrived. "You remember this one?" Tom asked quietly. Ray didn't answer. His hand lifted slightly, hovering just inches from the door, not touching it, not yet. Vic stood a few steps back, watching, his expression unreadable. Danny glanced between them. "What is it?" Ray finally spoke. "This is where we stayed." Tom felt the memory sharpen, not fully formed, but closer now. The room, the night, something unresolved. Danny shook his head. "We stayed in a lot of places." Ray turned to him. "Not like this." A gust of wind moved through the lot, lifting dust into the air in a brief, swirling motion. The sign creaked again. Somewhere, a loose piece of metal tapped softly against another, irregular, almost like a signal trying to form. Tom looked at the door. Number 6. It looked like any other door, and yet it didn't. "Maybe we should take a look inside," Ray said. Danny hesitated. "You think it's even open?" Vic reached into his pocket, pulled out a small set of keys. Among them, an old worn key with a faded plastic tag. Number 6, he held it up. No one spoke. Ray's eyes fixed on it. "Where did you get that?" Danny asked. Vic didn't answer immediately. Then, "I never gave it back." The words settled heavily in the air, not just as a statement, as something carried, something kept, for 42 years. Tom felt the weight of that more than anything else so far. Vic stepped forward. The gravel shifted under his boots. He stopped at the door, looked at it once, then inserted the key. It turned, easily, as if it had been waiting. Vic pushed the door open. The darkness inside didn't rush out. It remained where it was, still, quiet, watching. Ray took a step forward, then another. Tom followed. Danny lingered for just a second, then joined them, and as they crossed the threshold, the air changed, subtly but unmistakably, like stepping into a memory that had never fully ended. The room held his breath. That was the first thing Tom felt as he stepped inside. Not dust, not decay, not abandonment, but a strange, suspended stillness, as if the air itself had been waiting for them. It was dim, though not entirely dark. Thin lines of sunlight slipped through the edges of the drawn curtains, cutting the room into narrow bands of pale golden shadow. Nothing moved, not even the dust. Vic stepped in first, his presence filling the space with a quiet solidity. He didn't look around immediately. Instead, he stood just inside the doorway, as if allowing the room to acknowledge him before he acknowledged it. Ray followed, slower. Danny hesitated at the threshold, then crossed it with a small exhale, like someone stepping into cold water. Tom came last. The door remained open behind them. The room was simple. 2 beds, neatly made, too neatly. The covers lay flat, undisturbed, their patterns faded but intact. A small table stood between them, a lamp resting on top, its shade slightly tilted. A dresser lined the opposite wall. A mirror hung above it, and in the far corner, a chair, Nothing unusual, and yet everything felt arranged, not abandoned, maintained. Danny walked toward one of the beds, pressing his hand lightly against the blanket. "No dust," he said. Tom noticed it too. The surfaces were clean, not polished, but untouched by time in a way that didn't make sense. Ray moved toward the window, his fingers brushing the curtain. He didn't open it. "Feels like we just left," he said quietly. Vic finally stepped fully into the room, letting the door drift shut behind them with a soft, almost deliberate sound. The click of the latch echoed more than it should have. Tom turned slightly at the sound. It lingered, then faded. The air inside was cooler than outside. Not by much, but enough to notice. Tom walked slowly toward the dresser, his reflection forming in the mirror as he approached. For a moment he didn't recognize himself, not because the image was unclear, but because something about it felt delayed, as if the reflection took a fraction longer to settle than it should have. He blinked. It corrected itself. Just slight, he thought, just the angle. Still, he stepped back. Danny moved to the bathroom door, pushing it open with a creak that sounded too sharp for the room's quiet. "Water's still running," he said. Tom turned. "What?" Danny stepped aside. Inside, the sink dripped, slow, measured, each drop landing with a soft, hollow sound that seemed to stretch between seconds. Ray frowned. "That's not possible." Vic didn't look surprised. He walked over, reached in, and turned the faucet handle. The dripping stopped. Instantly, the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ray sat down on the edge of one of the beds. The mattress sank slightly under his weight, responding as if it had been used recently. He ran his hand across the fabric. "I remember this," he said. Tom glanced at him. "What do you remember?" Ray's gaze unfocused slightly, drifting inward. "The night," he said. "We got here late." Danny leaned against the wall. "We were tired. That's all I remember." Ray shook his head. "No," he said. "There was something else." Tom felt it again, that pull, a memory just beneath the surface, close, but not fully accessible. "What?" Tom asked. Ray didn't answer. Instead, he stood slowly and walked toward the chair in the corner. He stopped in front of it, stared. "Someone was sitting there," he said. Danny frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ray didn't look at him. "Not one of us," he added. The room seemed to tighten, just slightly. Vic spoke, his voice low. "That's not how it happened." Ray turned to him. "Then how did it happen?" Vic held his gaze. For a moment it looked like he might answer, but instead he said, "We were tired." Danny nodded quickly. "Yeah, exactly. Long drive, late night. Your mind starts playing tricks." Ray's expression hardened, not in anger, but in quiet resistance. "No," he said again. "This wasn't that." Tom watched them, feeling the tension begin to form. Not sharp, not explosive, but present, like a crack spreading slowly through something solid. A sound interrupted them, soft, almost imperceptible. From outside, Tom turned toward the door. "Did you hear that?" Danny straightened. "Hear what?" Tom listened. Nothing, just the faint whisper of wind against the building. He shook his head. Nothing, but something in the air had shifted. Vic moved toward the window and pulled the curtain back slightly. Light flooded in, stronger now. Outside, the parking lot lay empty. The car sat where they had left it, everything exactly as it should be, and yet Vic's eyes narrowed. "What?" Tom asked. Vic hesitated. then let the curtain fall back into place. Nothing, he said, but his tone suggested otherwise. Ray walked slowly around the room, his fingers trailing along the walls, the edges of furniture, as if searching for something hidden in the texture of the place. "Do you feel it?" he asked. Danny shook his head. "Feel what?" Ray stopped, turned. "This place," he said. "It's not just sitting here." Tom understood, though he couldn't explain how. "It's like it remembers," Tom said. Danny let out a quiet, uneasy laugh. That again. But it wasn't dismissive anymore, just uncertain. Tom stepped toward the second bed. Something caught his eye, a small indentation in the pillow, faint, but there, as if someone had rested their head there recently. He reached out, paused, then pressed his hand lightly against it. The fabric was cool, but not cold, used. He pulled his hand back slowly. "Guys," he said. They turned. Tom gestured toward the pillow. Danny stepped closer. "What is it?" Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. They could see it. Ray's expression shifted, something like recognition passing through him. "That's not ours," Danny said quietly. Vic didn't move. The silence deepened. Not empty, not peaceful, aware. Ray took a step back. "Maybe we shouldn't stay here," Danny said. Ray shook his head immediately. "No." Danny looked at him. "You just said—" "I said we remember," Ray interrupted. His voice was firmer now. "This is where it started." Tom felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Started what?" he asked. Ray looked at him for a long moment. Then, "I don't know," he said, "but I think we're about to find out." Outside, the wind picked up slightly. The motel sign creaked again. A slow, uneven sound, like something trying to speak through rust and time. Inside, the room held them, not trapping, not forcing, just holding, as if it had been waiting for their return, for this moment, for whatever came next. They did not leave the room right away. No one suggested it again, not after Ray's refusal. Quiet, but immovable, it settled into the space like a decision already made long ago, only now catching up with them. The air felt thicker, not warmer, not colder, just heavier. Tom moved toward the door and opened it, letting in a narrow slice of afternoon light. It didn't change much, but it gave the room edges again, restored a sense of outside, of distance. Danny stepped out first. He didn't say anything, just walked a few paces into the open lot, breathing in air that felt, somehow, easier. Ray remained inside. Vic stood near the window, still, as if anchored there. Tom lingered between both spaces, one foot inside, one outside, feeling the tension stretch between them like something physical. Finally, he stepped out. The motel looked different now, or maybe it was just them. The sunlight had shifted, casting longer shadows along the row of doors. The paint seemed more faded than before. The silence less neutral. Danny ran a hand over his face. "All right," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "We need to talk about this." Tom leaned against the railing. "About what?" Danny let out a short breath. "About whatever the hell that was in there." Tom didn't answer immediately. He glanced back toward the open door of room 6. Ray stood just inside, half in shadow, watching. "Could be nothing," Tom said. Danny looked at him sharply. "You don't believe that?" Tom met his gaze. "No," he admitted. A pause, the kind that invites something difficult. Danny nodded slowly. "Yeah, me neither." Vic stepped out then, closing the door behind him. Not fully, just enough that it rested against the frame. He joined them without speaking. Ray followed last. The four of them stood in a loose circle in the gravel lot, the motel stretching behind them like a quiet witness. Danny broke the silence. "You said we've been here before?" he said, looking at Ray. "That you remember it." Ray nodded. "Then say it," Danny pressed. "What happened here?" Ray's expression shifted, uncertain, searching. "I don't remember all of it," he said. "That's not good enough. It's what I've got." Danny stepped closer, frustration rising, not loud but steady. "You brought us here," he said. "You pushed for this whole trip. You keep saying we didn't finish something. So what is it?" Ray looked at him, something tightening behind his eyes. "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't remember everything." Danny shook his head. "No, that's not it." Tom felt the shift, the crack widening. "You remember enough," Danny continued. "Enough to know this place matters. Enough to drag us back out here." Ray's voice hardened slightly. "I didn't drag anyone." "No," Danny said. "You just asked in a way that made it hard to say no." Vic spoke then, cutting through the rising tension. "That's not why you came." Danny turned to him. "Oh, yeah. Why did I come?" Vic held his gaze. "Same reason the rest of us did." Silence. Danny waited. Vic didn't elaborate. Tom stepped in, his voice measured. "We all knew what this was," he said. "Maybe not clearly, but enough." Danny looked at him. "Did we?" Tom nodded slowly. "We came because something didn't sit right." Ray exhaled, tension easing slightly from his shoulders. "Exactly," he said. Danny let out a dry laugh. "That's pretty vague for something that's clearly been eating at all of you for 40 years. Tom didn't deny it, because it was true. A gust of wind moved through the lot, kicking up dust that swirled briefly around their feet before settling again. The motel sign creaked overhead. Danny glanced up at it, then back at the others. "I remember parts," he said. They all turned to him. His voice lowered. Not clearly, not like a story, just pieces. "What kind of pieces?" Tom asked. Danny hesitated, then, "A fight." Ray's eyes flickered. Vic's jaw tightened. Tom felt something click into place, not fully, but enough to recognize the shape of it. "Between who?" Tom asked. Danny shook his head. "I don't know." Ray looked away. "That's not true," Danny said quietly. Ray didn't respond. The tension shifted again. Less uncertain now, more focused. Vic stepped forward slightly, placing himself just off-center of the group. "It was late," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. "We'd been driving all day." Danny nodded. "Yeah, I remember that." Ray remained still. Tom watched Vic carefully. "What else?" Tom asked. Vic paused, just for a moment. Then, "We shouldn't have stopped here." The words landed differently than anything else so far, not because of what they said, but how they were said. Danny frowned. "Why not?" Vic didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the door of room 6, as if the answer was still inside. Ray stepped forward. "That's not it," he said. Vic turned to him. "No?" Vic asked. Ray shook his head. "It wasn't the place," he said. "It was us." A long silence followed. Danny looked between them. "Then say it," he said. "One of you just say it." Ray's voice dropped. "We left someone." The words seemed to absorb the sound around them, even the wind, even the distant hum of nothing. Tom felt his chest tighten. Danny stared at him. "What?" Ray swallowed. "We left someone here." Vic closed his eyes briefly. Danny shook his head, already rejecting it. "No," he said. No, we didn't. Ray met his gaze. We did. Danny stepped back slightly, as if putting physical distance between himself and the idea. That's not possible, he said. We would remember that. Ray didn't respond, because that was the problem. They didn't, not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel it. Tom spoke slowly. Who? He asked. Ray's expression shifted again, uncertain, strained. I don't know, he said. Danny let out a sharp breath. That doesn't make any sense. I know. Then how do you know we left someone? Ray hesitated, then, because it's the only thing that explains why this place feels like it does. Danny stared at him. That's not an explanation, he said. It's the truth, Ray replied quietly. Vic opened his eyes. His voice was low. We didn't mean to. All three of them turned to him. Danny shook his head slowly. Vic. But Vic didn't stop. We thought, he began, then faltered, the first crack in his composure. We thought they'd be fine. Tom felt the air shift again. He looked at Vic. At who? Tom asked. Vic didn't answer. The silence stretched, longer this time, heavier. The sun dipped lower, the light softening, shadows lengthening across the lot. Time moving, whether they were ready or not. Danny stepped away from the group, walking a few paces towards the edge of the property. He stopped there, hands on his hips, staring out at the empty stretch of land beyond. This is crazy, he muttered. But there was less certainty in it now. Ray watched him. Tom watched all of them. Vic stood still, and behind them the door to room 6 shifted slightly in the wind, just enough to open a fraction more, darkness visible through the gap. Waiting. Tom turned toward it. Something pulled at his attention, not strongly, but persistently, as if the room itself was no longer content to remain silent. We need to go back in, Ray said. Danny turned sharply. Why? Ray didn't look away from the door, because we didn't finish looking. Tom felt it too, that sense, not of curiosity, of necessity. Vic nodded once. Danny looked at each of them in disbelief. You're serious? No one answered, because they were. Danny exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Yeah, he said quietly. Of course we are. They turned, together, and walked back toward the room, toward what they had left behind, toward what had never really been left at all. The door to room 6 stood slightly ajar, not wide enough to invite, not closed enough to ignore, just enough. Tom noticed first how the light had changed inside. It was dimmer now, though the sun had not yet set. The thin strips of brightness that had cut across the room earlier were softer, dulled, as if something in the air had thickened. Ray stepped forward without hesitation. His hand touched the door. For a moment he didn't push it. He simply rested his palm against the surface, as if feeling for something beneath the wood. Temperature, vibration, memory. Then he opened it. The room was the same, and not the same. Tom couldn't explain it any better than that. Nothing had moved. The beds were still made. The chair remained in the corner. The lamp, the dresser, the mirror, all unchanged, but the stillness had deepened. It no longer felt like waiting. It felt like listening. They entered again. This time the air seemed cooler. Danny noticed it immediately. Okay, he said under his breath. That's new. Vic closed the door behind them more firmly than before. The latch clicked, and this time the sound didn't echo. It settled. Ray walked straight to the chair. No hesitation now. He stood over it, then slowly lowered himself down, as if placing himself into something already occupied. The chair creaked softly beneath his weight. He exhaled, and for a moment his posture changed. Subtly, his shoulders drew inward, his head tilted slightly, as though listening to something close, something quiet. Tom felt a flicker of unease. "Ray," he said. Ray didn't respond. Danny stepped closer. "Hey." Ray blinked. The moment passed. He straightened slightly, as if waking from a thought he hadn't realized he'd entered. "Yeah," he said. "I'm here." Tom studied him. "You sure?" Ray nodded, but his eyes said something else. Vic moved toward the dresser. He opened the top drawer. It slid out smoothly, too smoothly. Inside, nothing. But as Vic stared into it, his expression shifted. "What?" Danny asked. Vic didn't answer immediately. He reached in. His hand hovered just above the empty space. Then he pulled it back. "Nothing," he said, but the word lacked weight. Tom turned toward the mirror again. This time he approached more carefully. His reflection met him without delay. Older, tired, familiar, but something lingered behind it, not visible, just present. He leaned closer. For a second, just a second, he thought he saw movement behind him, not in the room, in the reflection. He turned. Nothing. When he looked back, the mirror showed only what it should. Danny walked slowly across the room, his steps measured now, cautious. "This doesn't feel right," he said. Ray nodded. "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." Vic closed the drawer. The sound was soft, final. Tom turned toward Ray. "You said we left someone," he said. Ray looked up at him. "Yeah." Tom took a step closer. "Then something must have happened here," he continued. "Something we're not remembering." Ray's gaze drifted, not away, inward. "I think—" he began, then stopped. Danny watched him carefully. "What?" Ray pressed his hand lightly against his temple. "I think we argued," he said. Danny nodded slowly. "Yeah, I said that." Ray shook his head. "No, not just a fight." He looked around the room. "At night," he added. "Late." Tom felt the edges of something begin to form. "What about?" he asked. Ray hesitated then. "A decision." The word hung in the air. Danny frowned. "What kind of decision?" Ray stood slowly from the chair. As he did, the floor creaked beneath him, a soft, uneven sound that seemed louder than it should have been. "We were supposed to go somewhere," Ray said. Vic's posture stiffened. Tom noticed. "Where?" Tom asked. Ray turned toward Vic. "You remember?" he said. Vic didn't respond. Danny looked between them. "Remember what?" Ray held Vic's gaze. "There was a turn," he said. A long silence. Vic's jaw tightened. Danny's expression shifted, uncertain, but attentive now. "What turn?" Danny asked. Ray took a step toward the window. He pulled the curtain back. The light outside had changed, lower now, softer, the colors deepening toward evening. He pointed. "Down that road," he said. Tom moved beside him, looking out. There it was, a narrow road branching off from the main one. He hadn't noticed it before, or maybe it hadn't been visible. Danny joined them. "I don't remember that," he said. Ray nodded slowly. "We weren't supposed to." Vic spoke, quiet. "We argued about it." Tom turned to him. "About what?" Vic kept his eyes on the road outside. "Taking it," he said. Danny frowned. "Why would we?" Vic didn't answer. Ray did. "Because someone told us to." The room seemed to still even further. Tom felt something shift, more sharply now. "Who?" he asked. Ray shook his head. I don't know. Danny let out a short breath. That's not helpful. Ray didn't react. He kept looking at the road. Tom followed his gaze. The road was narrow, less maintained, fading into the distance more quickly than the main stretch. There was something about it, not visible but unsettling. You think that's where we were going? Tom asked. Ray nodded. I think that's where everything changed. Vic stepped closer to the window. For a moment, all four of them stood there, looking out at that road, silent, connected by something they didn't fully understand. Danny broke it. And what? He said. We didn't go. Ray's voice dropped. We did. Danny turned sharply. Then what do you mean we left someone? Ray didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the road. We came back, he said finally. The words were quiet, but they landed harder than anything else. Tom felt it then. A sharp, sudden clarity, not full memory, but something close, returning. The car, the silence, something missing. His breath caught. Not all of us, he said. Ray looked at him. Yeah, Ray said. Danny stepped back slightly, shaking his head. No, he said. No, that's not. Vic interrupted. We thought they'd catch up. Danny stared at him. What? Vic's voice was steady, but strained beneath it. We thought they'd follow the road back, he said. Tom felt the weight of it settle. Not just a mistake, a choice. Danny's voice rose slightly, not loud but sharp. Who? He demanded. Who are we talking about? Ray closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were with us, he said. Danny shook his head again. That's not an answer. Ray's expression tightened. Because I don't remember their name, he said. The room fell silent. That was worse, much worse. Tom felt something cold move through him. You don't forget something like that, he said. Ray didn't argue. No, he said quietly, you don't. Outside the light continued to fade. The road darkened slightly. The turn became harder to see, as if it were already beginning to disappear again. Vic stepped back from the window. We left, he said. Danny looked at him. His expression caught between anger and disbelief. Why? Vic didn't answer. Ray did. Because we thought it didn't matter, he said. The words felt wrong, and they all knew it. Tom looked around the room. The beds, the chair, the mirror, the faint indentation in the pillow. Something was missing, and yet something remained. We have to go there, Ray said. No hesitation now. Danny stared at him. You're serious? Ray nodded. That road, he said. That's where this ends. Tom felt it, the inevitability. Vic gave a slow single nod. Danny looked at each of them, one by one, and saw the same thing in all three. Decision, already made. He exhaled. Yeah, he said quietly. Of course it is. The room seemed to release something. Not relief, recognition. Tom turned toward the door. As he opened it, the last light of afternoon spilled into the room, long, stretched, almost fragile. Behind them, the space they had entered twice now settled back into stillness, but not the same stillness as before. Something had changed, not in the room, in them. They stepped outside, together, and for the first time since the journey began, they knew where they were going. They left the motel without looking back, not out of indifference, but because something in each of them understood that turning around would only make it harder. The sky had begun its slow descent into evening. The light stretched longer now, softer, casting everything in muted gold and amber. Shadows followed them as they walked to the car, elongated versions of themselves moving just slightly out of sync. Vic unlocked the Impala. The doors opened with that same solid, familiar sound. They got in without discussion, positions unchanged, as if altering them might disrupt something fragile that had already begun. The engine turned over. A low, steady rumble, grounding, real. Vic eased the car forward, gravel crunching beneath the tires, then guided it back toward the main road. For a moment no one spoke. They didn't need to. The road ahead, the one branching off, narrower, quieter, was already waiting. Vic slowed as they approached it. The turn looked different now, less defined, as if the edges had softened, blurred slightly into the surrounding land. "You see that?" Danny said. Tom leaned forward. "Yeah." The road was still there, but it didn't feel fixed. Ray's voice was quiet. "It's the same." Vic didn't ask how he knew. He turned the wheel. The car left the main road. The tires rolled onto a surface that was technically asphalt, but barely. Cracks ran across it in uneven patterns. Sand gathered in shallow drifts, reclaiming the edges. The sound changed immediately. Less smooth, more present, every small imperfection transmitted through the car. Danny shifted in his seat. "This wasn't like this before." Ray didn't respond. He was looking ahead. Focused, the landscape narrowed, not physically, but perceptually. The sky seemed lower here, the distance less expansive, the horizon closer but harder to define. Telephone poles were absent, no signs, no markers, just the road and the land. Tom watched the side mirror. The motel was already gone, not hidden, not distant, gone. He turned forward again, said nothing. The light shifted again, subtle but noticeable. The golden hue deepened faster than it should have. Shadows lengthened. Time felt compressed. "Anyone else feel that?" Danny asked. No one needed to ask what he meant. "Yes," Tom said. Vic's grip on the wheel tightened slightly. Ray leaned forward. "We drove this," he said. Not a question, a statement. The road curved gently, then straightened, then curved again. Each bend felt familiar, not visually, but physically, as if their bodies remembered the motion even if their minds did not. A shape appeared ahead, dark, stationary. Vic slowed. "What is that?" Danny asked. They approached. It resolved into a car, parked on the side of the road, old, dust-covered. Tom felt something tighten in his chest. "Do you recognize it?" he asked. Ray didn't answer. Vic pulled the Impala to a stop, a short distance behind it. The engine idled. The sound seemed louder here, more isolated. They sat for a moment. No one moving, no one speaking. Then Danny opened the door. "All right," he said quietly. "We're not just going to sit here." He stepped out. The others followed. The air was still, unnaturally so. No wind, no distant sound, just absence. The car looked older up close, not just in condition, in time. Its design, its shape, belonged to another era. Familiar, too familiar. Tom walked around it slowly. His fingers hovered near the surface, but he didn't touch. Ray approached the driver's side. The window was slightly open. He leaned in, then froze. "What?" Danny asked. Ray didn't move. Vic stepped closer. "Ray?" Ray turned slowly. His face had changed. Not dramatically, but enough. "That's not possible," he said. Tom felt the words before he understood them. "What is it?" Tom asked. Ray swallowed. "It's ours." Silence, immediate, complete. Danny shook his head. "No, No, it's not. Ray gestured toward the interior. Look! Danny leaned in. His expression shifted. Confusion first, then something deeper. Recognition. That's... He started, then stopped. Vic stepped forward, looked inside, his jaw tightened. Tom approached last. He didn't want to, but he did. Inside the car, the seats, the dashboard, the small details, everything matched. Not the Impala, the car they had driven 42 years ago. Tom felt his breath shorten. That's not possible, he repeated. Ray stepped back. We were here, he said. Danny shook his head, backing away from the vehicle. No, he said. No, we're mixing things up. Vic's voice was low. No, he said. We're not. The light flickered, not visibly, but in perception. The shadow shifted slightly, out of sync. Tom noticed. So did Ray. Neither spoke. Danny rubbed his temples. This doesn't make sense, he said. We left. We went back. He stopped, something catching. What? Tom asked. Danny looked up, his eyes unfocused for a moment, then sharpened. We didn't all get back in the car, he said. The words landed, hard. Ray nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Vic closed his eyes briefly. Tom felt it, the memory pushing closer now. Not clear, but undeniable. Someone stayed, Tom said. Ray looked at him. Yes. Danny's voice dropped. Why? Ray didn't answer. Vic did, because they didn't want to leave. Silence, heavier than before. Danny stared at him. What do you mean? Vic opened his eyes. They said we shouldn't go, he said. Tom felt something align, fragments connecting. They told us not to take this road, Tom added. Ray nodded. Yes. Danny shook his head slowly. And we ignored them? No one answered, because they had. A sound broke the silence, soft, from inside the old car. All four of them turned. The interior remained still, empty, and yet something had shifted, just slightly, the angle of the steering wheel, or maybe something behind it. Ray took a step back. Did you see that? He asked. Tom nodded. Danny didn't speak. Vic moved closer, slow, deliberate. He reached for the driver's door, paused, then pulled it open. The hinges creaked, a long drawn-out sound that seemed to stretch across time. Inside, nothing, no one, just the interior, still, and yet not empty. Vic leaned in slightly, examining, listening. Tom felt a pressure in the air, a presence, not visible but undeniable now. Ray spoke, barely above a whisper. They're still here. Danny turned sharply. Don't say that. Ray didn't look at him. They never left, he said. The light dimmed further. Too quickly. The sun had not yet set, and yet the world felt closer to dusk than it should. Tom stepped back, his heart steady but heavy. We need to keep going, he said. Danny looked at him. What? Tom met his gaze. This isn't the end, he said. It's part of it. Ray nodded. Yes. Vic closed the car door. The sound was final. They stood there for a moment longer, beside the car that should not exist, on a road that should not feel this way. Then, without another word, they returned to the Impala. The engine started, the sound louder now, or maybe everything else had grown quieter. Vic pulled back onto the road. They passed the old car. Tom watched it in the mirror. It remained, still, waiting. The road stretched ahead, darker now, narrower, more defined in its direction. And as they drove, each of them felt it, clearly now, no longer vague, no longer distant. They were not just remembering, they were returning. The road did not change, and yet everything about it did. They drove in silence, not the earlier kind, the quiet of distance, of unfamiliarity, but a denser silence now. One that pressed inward, narrowing thought, sharpening sensation. The light continued to fade, too quickly. Tom checked his watch. Late afternoon, still hours from dusk. He didn't mention it. The road stretched ahead, straight now, cutting through the land with a kind of intent that felt almost purposeful. No turns, no intersections, just forward. Danny shifted in the back seat. "Feels like we've been on this stretch a while," he said. Vic didn't respond. Ray leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed ahead. "We have," he said. Danny frowned. "How would you know?" Ray didn't answer. Tom glanced at the rear-view mirror. For a moment, he saw the old car again, closer than it should have been. Following. His breath caught. He blinked. The road behind them was empty. He said nothing. A sound began, soft, almost indistinguishable at first. A low hum. Not from the engine, not from the road. Something separate. "You hear that?" Danny asked. Tom nodded slowly. "Yeah." Vic adjusted his grip on the wheel. "I hear it." Ray didn't speak. He was already listening. The sound grew slightly, not louder, clearer, like a signal resolving through static. Then it stopped, abruptly, leaving a silence that felt deeper than before. The temperature inside the car dropped, subtly, but enough. Danny rubbed his arms. "Okay, that's definitely new." Tom exhaled slowly. "Windows closed?" he asked. "They're closed," Vic said. Ray's voice was quiet. "It's not the air." The road ahead shimmered, not from heat, from something else, a distortion, like looking through water. Vic slowed slightly. "What is that?" Danny said. Tom leaned forward. The distortion held, did not shift with perspective, did not fade. They drove into it. For a brief moment, everything changed. The light dimmed, the sound flattened. The car felt lighter, as if the road had dropped away beneath them for just a second. Then they were through. The world snapped back, but not entirely. Something remained off, slight, persistent. Tom turned his head slightly. The landscape looked the same, but the colours muted, as if viewed through something thin, unseen. Ray exhaled. "That's it," he said. Danny looked at him. "That's what?" Ray didn't look away from the road. "This is where it started to feel wrong." Vic's jaw tightened. "We should turn back," Danny said suddenly. No one answered. Danny leaned forward. "I'm serious. Whatever this is, it's not normal." Tom spoke carefully. "We're past that point." Danny shook his head. "There's always a point you can turn around." Ray turned slightly. "No," he said, "not this time." The road ahead darkened, not from the sky, from itself. The asphalt took on a deeper tone, almost absorbing the remaining light. A shape appeared ahead, standing in the road. Vic slowed immediately. The car rolled forward at a cautious pace. The shape did not move. Tom's pulse steadied, not quickened. That surprised him. Fear wasn't what he felt. Recognition was closer. As they approached, the shape resolved. A figure, human, standing still, facing away from them. Danny's voice dropped. "Okay, no." Vic brought the car to a stop several yards away. The engine idled. The sound felt intrusive now. Too loud. No one moved. No one spoke. The figure stood in the center of the road, motionless, its outline indistinct, not blurred, but lacking detail, as if the light refused to fully define it. Ray whispered, "Do you see them?" Tom nodded. Vic didn't answer. Danny swallowed. "Is that a person?" The figure shifted, not turning, not stepping, just adjusting, slightly. The air tightened. Tom opened the door. Danny grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" Tom looked at him. "I don't know," he said, but he stepped out anyway. The ground felt different beneath his feet, not unstable, but less certain, as if it responded a fraction of a second late. Ray got out next, then Vic. Danny hesitated, then followed. They stood beside the car, facing the figure. No sound, no wind, no movement. Tom took a step forward. The figure did not react. Another step. Closer now. Ray spoke softly. "Wait." Tom stopped. Ray walked forward, passing him. His expression was focused, drawn. He stopped a few feet from the figure, close enough now that the details should have been clear, but they weren't. "Hey," Ray said. His voice was calm, measured. The figure responded, not with movement, with presence, a shift in the air, a subtle realignment. Then, slowly, it began to turn. Danny took a step back. "No," he said quietly. The figure turned, halfway, 3/4, then fully, its face. Tom felt something collapse inward, not fear, not shock, something deeper. The face was familiar, but not complete. Features suggested rather than defined. Eyes that held shape, but no clear color. A mouth that seemed to form meaning without words. Ray stood still, very still. "You stayed," Ray said. The figure did not respond, not verbally, but something in its posture shifted, a recognition. Danny shook his head, backing away. "This isn't real," he said. "This isn't." Vic stepped forward, stopping beside Ray. Tom moved closer too, drawn. The figure looked at them, at all of them, and then it spoke, not with sound, but with something else, a pressure, a memory. Tom saw it, not clearly, but enough. The night, the argument, the decision. Someone standing here, refusing to leave. "You left," the voice said. Not heard, felt. Ray's breath trembled. "We thought—" The voice pressed again, stronger. "You left." Danny covered his ears. "Stop," he said. "Just stop." Vic's voice broke, just slightly. "We didn't mean to." The figure stepped forward. One step. The air shifted with it. Tom felt the memory sharpen, edges forming, clarity approaching. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure paused, and for the first time, something like emotion passed through it. Not anger, not sadness, something older. Then it answered, not with a name, but with absence, and in that absence they understood. They hadn't just left someone behind. They had left someone forgotten, completely. Ray stepped back, his voice barely a whisper. "That's why we couldn't remember." The figure watched them, still, present. The light dimmed further. The road darkened. The world narrowed. Tom felt it now, clearly, unavoidably. They had reached the place where memory and reality no longer separated cleanly, and whatever stood before them was not just part of the past. It had been waiting. The figure did not follow them. It remained where it stood, centered in the road, suspended between light and shadow, watching without movement as they stepped back toward the car. No one said it aloud, but all four of them felt it. They had not left it behind. They had only created distance, the doors shut with more force than necessary, each one a small contained act of control. Vic started the engine. The sound cut through the stillness like something foreign, mechanical, almost intrusive. For a moment no one moved. Then the car rolled forward, slowly, carefully, passing the place where the figure had stood. Tom turned his head. He didn't want to, but he did. The road behind them was empty, completely. No trace, no shape, no distortion, just asphalt stretching into distance. "That's it," Danny said, his voice tight. "That's enough. We turn around." No one answered. Danny leaned forward, urgency rising. "Vic, turn the car around." Vic kept his eyes on the road. "We can't." Danny's voice sharpened. "Why not?" Vic didn't respond immediately, because there was no simple answer. Ray shifted in his seat, a small movement, but wrong. Tom noticed first. "Ray?" Ray didn't answer. He was leaning forward slightly, one hand pressed against his chest. Not dramatically, just enough. Danny turned. "What is it?" Ray exhaled slowly. "Nothing," he said, but the word came uneven. Tom twisted in his seat. "Ray." Ray shook his head. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. It was visible now, in the tension around his mouth, in the way his breathing had shortened. Vic glanced in the rearview mirror, just once, then again. "Ray," he said quietly. Ray closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. "I said I'm fine." The road continued, unbroken, unyielding. Danny leaned closer. "No," he said, "you're not." Ray's hand tightened slightly against his chest. "Just give me a minute." The car felt smaller now, the air thinner. Tom watched him carefully. "You've been like this since this morning," he said. Ray didn't respond. Danny's voice dropped. "How long?" Ray let out a breath that didn't quite steady. "A while." "That's not an answer." Ray turned his head slightly, meeting Danny's eyes. "It doesn't matter." Danny stared at him. "Yes, it does." Vic spoke without turning. "How bad?" Ray hesitated. That was enough. Tom felt the weight of it settle, not new, not sudden. Something carried, hidden. Ray leaned back slightly, his hand dropping from his chest. "It's under control," he said. The words were practiced, too smooth. Danny shook his head. "Under control?" he repeated. "You can barely breathe." Ray's voice tightened. "I said it's fine." Silence followed, but it wasn't acceptance. It was resistance. Tom spoke more quietly. "What did the doctors say?" Ray didn't answer. Vic's hands tightened on the wheel. "Ray." Ray exhaled slowly. "They said," he began, then stopped. The road ahead darkened further, the light fading faster now. Danny waited. "Say it." Ray looked out the window, the landscape passing by without detail. "They said I shouldn't be doing this," he said. The words landed, heavy, expected, and still too much. Danny leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Of course they did," he said. Tom closed his eyes briefly. "How long?" Tom asked. Ray didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. Then, "Not long enough to waste it," he said. Danny let out a sharp breath. "That's not what I asked." Ray turned to him, and for the first time there was no deflection, no softness, just clarity. "Months," he said. The words stayed, echoing. Vic's grip tightened further. The steering wheel creaked faintly under his hands. Tom felt something shift inside him. Not surprise, not exactly, something closer to alignment, as if a piece had finally found its place. "That's why," Tom said quietly. Ray nodded. Danny stared at him. "That's why what?" Ray's voice was steady now. "That's why we're here." Danny shook his head. No, he said. No, you don't get to decide that for all of us. Ray didn't argue. I didn't, he said. You did, Danny insisted. You brought us here knowing this, whatever this is, might be dangerous or... He stopped. The word didn't come. Ray watched him. I brought us here because we already left something behind, he said. Danny looked away. That doesn't mean we have to go back, Tom spoke. Yes, it does. Danny turned sharply. You too. Tom met his gaze. We've been carrying this for 40 years, Tom said. We just didn't know what it was. Danny's expression tightened. And now we do. Ray shook his head slightly. No, he said, but we're close. The car moved through another stretch of distortion, subtle but present, the edges of the road wavering slightly, the horizon bending. Vic spoke quietly. We're not turning back. Danny closed his eyes, for a moment, then opened them. Resigned, not convinced, Ray leaned his head back against the seat. His breathing steadier now, but not normal. Tom watched the road ahead, the darkness deepening, the sense of movement shifting. Whatever this is, Tom said, it's connected to him. He didn't need to say who. Ray gave a faint, tired smile. Always was, he said. The car continued forward. No turns, no exits. Behind them, nothing. Ahead, only the road. And somewhere between memory and whatever this had become, something waited. Not with urgency, not with threat, with certainty. Ray closed his eyes again. Not asleep, just gathering strength. Danny looked at him, then away, then back again. Vic drove, steady, unwavering. Tom sat in the front seat, watching the road as it narrowed further, the light thinning into something closer to dusk than time allowed. And in that quiet, contained space, fear settled in, not sharp, not overwhelming, but real. Because now, it wasn't just about the past, it was about how much time remained to face it. Night came without warning, not gradually, not with the usual soft surrender of light into shadow, but abruptly, like a curtain drawn too quickly across the sky. One moment the road was dim, the next it was dark. Vic slowed the car. The headlights cut forward in two pale beams, illuminating only a narrow stretch ahead. Beyond that, nothing, no horizon, no sky, just an absence that swallowed distance. Danny leaned forward. That's not normal, he said. No one disagreed. The road had changed. It no longer felt like something laid across the land. It felt like something suspended in it. A path without context, without edges. Ray opened his eyes. The dim light from the dashboard caught his face, hollowing it slightly, deepening the lines around his eyes. We're close, he said. Vic didn't ask how he knew. He just kept driving. The engine sounded different now, muted, as if the darkness absorbed part of it. Tom watched the beams of light ahead. They didn't stretch as far as they should. They seemed to stop early, cut short. A shape began to form in the distance, not sudden, gradual, like something emerging from beneath the surface of the dark. Vic slowed further. The car rolled forward at a careful, measured pace. The shape resolved into a structure, a small building, alone, set just off the road. Tom felt the recognition before the details became clear. A low roof, a single doorway. A window to the side. Danny whispered, "No." Ray leaned forward. "This is it," he said. Vic brought the car to a stop. The engine idled, the headlights fixed on the building, holding it in place against the surrounding dark. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ray opened the door. "Wait," Danny said sharply. Ray didn't stop. He stepped out. Tom followed, then Vic. Danny hesitated, then swore under his breath and got out too. The air outside was colder, not sharply, but deeply, a cold that settled beneath the surface. They stood facing the building. The light from the car stretched behind them, casting long shadows forward, merging with the darkness ahead. "It's the place," Ray said. Tom nodded. He knew it, without remembering how. Danny shook his head slowly. "I don't remember this," he said. Vic's voice was quiet. "You do?" Danny looked at him. "No," he said. "I don't." Vic stepped forward, a few paces toward the building, stopped. "We argued here," Vic said. The words settled into the space between them. Ray moved beside him. "Yes." Tom felt the memory begin to rise. Not whole, but stronger now. "What about?" Tom asked. Vic didn't answer. Ray did. "Turning back," Ray said. Danny frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We already turned back." Ray shook his head. "No," he said. "This was before that." Tom felt something align, a sequence forming. "We came here first," Tom said slowly. Ray nodded. Danny looked between them. "And then what?" Silence. Vic turned toward the building, his posture tightening. "We shouldn't have come," he said. Ray's voice sharpened. "We didn't know." Vic turned back. "No," he said. "You didn't want to know." The tension snapped. Danny stepped forward. "All right, enough," he said. "You two clearly remember more than the rest of us, so stop talking around it and just say it." Ray met his gaze. "I'm trying." "No," Danny said. "You're avoiding it." Ray's expression hardened. "And you're pretending it didn't happen." Danny's voice rose. "Because I don't remember it," Vic spoke, low, firm. "You do." Danny turned on him. "Then why can't I see it?" Vic stepped closer. "Because you chose not to." The words landed hard. Danny stared at him. "What does that mean?" Tom felt it then. The final piece pressing forward. Vic's voice dropped. "We weren't alone," he said. Danny shook his head immediately. "No." Ray nodded. "Yes." Danny stepped back. "No, that's not. There were 4 of us." Ray's voice was quiet. "There were 5. Silence. Danny's breath caught. He looked at Tom, then Vic, then Ray, searching. "No," he said again. "That's not possible." Tom spoke slowly. "It is." Danny's eyes widened slightly. "You remember him?" Tom said. Danny shook his head harder now. "No, I don't." Ray stepped closer. "He was with us the whole trip," he said, "from the beginning." Danny's voice broke slightly. "Then why can't I see him?" Ray hesitated. Then, "Because we left him here." The words hit differently now, clearer, sharper. Danny staggered back a step. "No," he said. "No, we wouldn't do that." Vic's voice was steady. "We did." Danny looked at him. "Why?" Vic didn't answer. Ray did. "Because he didn't want to go back," Ray said. Tom felt the memory surge, fragments locking into place, the argument, voices raised, someone standing firm, refusing. "He said we shouldn't have come," Tom added. Ray nodded. "He said the road wasn't right." Danny's breathing quickened. "That doesn't mean we leave him." Vic stepped forward again, this time closer to Danny. "He wouldn't get in the car," Vic said. Danny shook his head. "Then we wait." Ray's voice dropped. "We didn't." Silence. Danny's eyes moved between them. Desperate now. "Why?" he asked. Vic answered. "Because we thought he was wrong." The simplicity of it made it worse. Tom felt it settle fully now. Not just memory, responsibility. We thought he'd come after us, Tom said. Ray nodded. Yes. Danny's voice fell to a whisper. And he didn't. No one answered, because that was the answer. The wind moved through the space suddenly, a low, steady sound, the first real movement in the air since they arrived. Danny turned slowly toward the building. He's here, he said. Not a question. Ray followed his gaze. Yes. Vic stepped forward, toward the door. Tom felt the pull again. Stronger now. Danny stood still. For a moment. Then he followed. They approached the building together. The door stood closed, plain, unremarkable, and yet everything pointed to it. Vic reached for the handle, paused. This is where we left him, he said. Ray closed his eyes briefly. Danny's voice was barely audible. Then this is where we end it. Tom felt the weight of that. Not resolution, but necessity. Vic opened the door. Darkness waited inside, not empty, not silent, waiting, and as they stepped forward, the past no longer felt distant, it felt present, unfinished. The darkness inside the building was not absolute. It had depth, layers, as if it held space rather than merely occupying it. Vic entered first, not cautiously, not recklessly, just inevitably. Tom followed, then Ray. Danny came last, hesitating only at the threshold before stepping in. The air inside was colder, not sharply, but deeply, like a place untouched by sun for a very long time. The smell was faint. Dust, wood, and something else, something older. The door closed behind them. No one had touched it. The sound was soft, final. For a moment they stood in near darkness. Then a dim light emerged, not from a source they could see, just enough to shape the room. It was small, single space, a table, 2 chairs, a counter against the far wall, nothing else, and yet it felt occupied. Tom's chest tightened, not from fear, from recognition. This is where we argued, he said. Ray nodded. Danny looked around, his expression strained now, trying to hold on to doubt, but losing ground. Vic stepped toward the center of the room, stopped. He stood there, Vic said. Tom followed his gaze. The space was empty, and yet it wasn't. Ray moved slowly to one of the chairs, touched it, pulled his hand back quickly. It's warm, he said. Danny shook his head. No, he said. No, that's not possible. Tom stepped closer, placed his hand on the table. It was warm, as if someone had just been there. The air shifted, subtle but undeniable, a presence. Danny backed toward the wall. This isn't real, he said again, but his voice had changed. It no longer tried to convince anyone else, only himself. Ray turned slowly. He's here, he said. The light dimmed slightly, not fading, tightening. Vic's voice dropped. We need to finish this. Tom nodded. He understood. Not how, but why. A sound moved through the room, soft, like breath. Danny froze. Did you hear that? No one answered, because they all had. The air grew heavier. Then he was there, not appearing, not forming. Just present, standing where Vic had pointed, the figure, clearer now, more defined, not fully, but enough, a man, not young, not old, familiar, and still impossible to fully see. Tom felt it hit him, not visually, emotionally, a recognition without detail. Ray stepped forward, slow, careful. I'm sorry, he said. The figure did not respond. Danny's breathing quickened. Say something, he whispered. Vic stood still, rigid. Tom took a step forward. We thought you'd follow, he said. The air shifted again. Stronger this time. The figure moved. One step. Danny pressed back against the wall. No, no. Ray didn't move. You stayed, Ray said. The figure tilted his head slightly, a gesture almost human. Then it spoke, not with sound, with memory. The room changed, not physically, perceptually. Tom saw it, the night, clear now. Voices raised, the argument sharp. You don't understand, the man said. Ray's younger voice. We can't just stay here, Danny. It's just a road. Vic, enough. Tom, we're leaving. The man stood firm. You shouldn't have come, he said. Silence. Then movement. The door? The car? Tom felt it. The moment. They left, and the man did not follow. The memory broke. The room returned. Danny slid down against the wall. Oh, God, he whispered. Ray stood still, eyes fixed on the figure. Vic's voice was strained. We thought you'd come after us. The figure stepped closer. The air tightened. Tom felt something else now. Not just memory. Consequence. You didn't, Ray said. The figure stopped. A pause. Then another shift. Ray staggered slightly. Tom turned. Ray? Ray's hand went to his chest again. Harder this time. His breathing broke. Hey, Danny said, pushing himself up. Ray shook his head weakly. No, just... He didn't finish. His knees gave. Tom caught him before he hit the ground. Ray. Ray's weight was heavier than expected. Not physically, but in finality. Vic stepped forward. Ray, stay with us. Ray's eyes fluttered, focused, then unfocused. It's all right, he said. No, Danny said sharply. No, it's not. Ray looked at him, a faint smile. It was always going to be here, he said. Tom felt something break. Not like this, Tom said. Ray's gaze shifted, past them, to the figure. I remember now, he whispered. The room held still. What? Vic asked. Ray's voice faded. We knew, he said. Silence. Tom felt it. The truth. They hadn't just forgotten. They had chosen not to remember. Ray's hand tightened briefly on Tom's arm, then loosened. His breath slowed, stopped. The room did not react. No wind, no sound, just stillness. Danny stared, frozen. Vic closed his eyes. Just once. Tom held Ray, not moving. The figure remained, watching, not angry, not accusing, present, as if this had always been part of it. The cost, the completion. Danny's voice broke. No. But there was nothing to argue with. Nothing to deny. The room held them all. The living, the dead, the remembered, the forgotten. And for the first time, nothing was hidden any more. For a long time no one moved. Time did not stop, but it no longer moved forward in any way they could measure. It settled, pooled in the corners of the room, stretched thin between breaths that no longer came. Tom still held Ray. The weight had changed, not heavier, but final. Danny stood a few steps away, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, as if they had forgotten their purpose. Vic remained where he was, eyes open now, fixed on something beyond the visible, and the figure waited. It had not approached further, had not retreated. It simply existed in the space between them, as if this moment, this precise convergence, was what it had been holding for all these years. Tom lowered Ray gently to the floor, carefully, deliberately, as if there were still something fragile to preserve. The air shifted, not with movement, with attention. Danny's voice came first, broken. You said we thought he'd follow. No one answered. Danny turned. his eyes searching the figure now, no longer avoiding it. "Why didn't you?" he asked. The question lingered, not loud, not demanding, but real. The figure tilted his head slightly, that same almost human gesture. Then the answer came, not as sound, but as clarity. Tom felt it, not in words, in understanding. "Because you didn't stay." Danny staggered slightly, as if the meaning had struck him physically. "We had to go," he said. The defense came quickly, too quickly. The air tightened. "You chose to go." Vic stepped forward. "We thought—" He stopped. The sentence had nowhere to land. Tom spoke instead. "We thought it didn't matter." Silence. The figure did not move, but something in it deepened. Ray's words echoed in Tom's mind. "We knew." And suddenly he did. Not just the memory, the intention behind it. They hadn't been confused. They hadn't been lost. They hadn't made a simple mistake. They had made a decision to leave. Danny shook his head. "No," he said. "No, we were kids. We didn't—" Tom turned to him. "We knew," he said. Danny froze. "You remember it now," Tom continued. "Not accusing, not gentle, just true." Danny's face changed. The resistance cracked, and through it the memory came, clear, sharp, unavoidable. "I said we should just go," Danny whispered. The words hung in the air. Vic closed his eyes briefly. "You did," Vic said. Danny looked at him. "You didn't stop me." Vic met his gaze. "No," he said. Tom felt the weight settle evenly now, not on one, on all of them. "I agreed," Tom said. Danny's breath hitched. Ray's voice, not present and yet, lingered. "We knew." Danny turned toward the figure. His voice broke. "I didn't think—" The response came immediately. "You didn't want to." Danny flinched. Vic stepped forward again, closer now. "We can't change that," he said. The figure did not react. "But we're here now," Vic continued. A pause. The air shifted again. Less tension, more focus. Tom stepped beside Vic. "We didn't come back for forgiveness," he said. Danny looked at him. "Then why are we here?" Tom answered without hesitation. "To remember." The words settled differently. The figure moved, one step forward. The distance between them closed. Tom did not step back. Neither did Vic. Danny hesitated, then remained where he was. The presence of the figure changed. Not softer, not kinder, clearer, and in that clarity, the absence that defined it began to take shape. Not a face, not a name, but a place, the space they had left behind. Ray. Tom felt it then, the connection. This had never been about one person. It had been about what they had all chosen to leave. Ray had known. That's why he brought them back. Not to fix it, to face it. Vic spoke quietly. "What happens now?" The answer came slowly, not in words, in release. The pressure in the room shifted. The weight of the air loosened. The figure stepped closer. And for a moment, just a moment, Tom thought he could see more. Not features, but something like presence, complete. Then it began to fade, not vanish, resolve, like something no longer held in place. Danny took a step forward. Wait. But there was nothing to stop. The space where the figure had been remained, empty, truly empty. For the first time, the room changed. The light shifted, warmer now. The air, lighter. Tom exhaled. A breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding for decades. Vic stepped back, his posture finally loosening. Danny stood still, processing, and Ray. Tom turned. Ray lay where they had placed him, still. But something had changed there too, not in his body, in the absence around it. It no longer felt incomplete, it felt finished. Danny spoke, his voice quiet now. "What do we do?" Tom looked at him, then at Vic. "We take him with us," Tom said. Vic nodded. Danny closed his eyes, then opened them again. "Yeah," he said. Outside, the darkness had lifted, not gone, but changed. The road was still there, but now it led forward. And for the first time, they understood where. They carried Ray out together, not as a burden, not as something fragile that might break, but as something that had already endured what it needed to. Their hands were steady, their movements careful, but there was no urgency in them any more, only intention. Outside, the night had softened. It was still dark, but no longer oppressive. The sky had depth again. A few distant stars had begun to appear, faint, hesitant, but real. The road was visible, clear, defined. They laid Ray gently across the back seat. Danny adjusted his jacket beneath Ray's head without being asked. It was a small gesture, almost automatic, but it lingered, quietly meaningful in a way words no longer needed to be. Vic closed the door. The sound was soft, final. For a moment they stood beside the car, not speaking, not looking at each other. Just being there. Tom turned slightly, glancing back at the building. It looked smaller now, less like a place, more like something that had served its purpose. "Feels different," Danny said. His voice had changed. The tension was gone. In its place, something quieter. Tom nodded. "Yeah." Vic didn't turn. "Because it is," he said. Danny looked at him. "What changed?" Vic took a breath. Not deep, just enough. "We did," he said. That was enough. They got back into the car. The seats felt the same, but they didn't. Vic started the engine. This time the sound felt grounded again, real, connected to the world around them. He eased the car forward. The headlights stretched farther now. The darkness no longer pushed back. They drove in silence, but it was not the same silence. It didn't press, didn't narrow, didn't demand. It allowed. Tom watched the road ahead. It seemed wider, not physically, but in possibility. Behind them, the building disappeared, not abruptly, not unnaturally. Just left behind, Danny leaned his head back, closed his eyes, not to escape, just to rest. Ray lay still, but the space around him no longer felt unfinished. There was no tension there, no lingering question. Vic drove steadily, hands relaxed on the wheel for the first time since the journey began. Tom spoke quietly. "We didn't fix anything." Danny opened his eyes slightly. "No," he said. A pause. "But we stopped pretending," Danny added. Tom nodded. Vic's voice came from the front. "That's as close as it gets." The road curved gently. They followed it without hesitation. The sky lightened slightly at the horizon. Not dawn, not yet, but something approaching it. Tom thought about the years, all the time that had passed, all the things they had carried without knowing. It hadn't made sense then. It barely made sense now, but it didn't need to. Some things weren't meant to be solved, only faced. Danny shifted slightly. "You think he knew?" he asked. Tom didn't need clarification. "Yes," he said. Vic nodded once. Ray had known. That was why he had brought them here, not for closure, for truth. They drove on. The road no longer felt like it was leading them somewhere specific. It simply continued, and that was enough. After some time, Vic spoke again, quiet, measured. "We'll reach the main road soon." Tom looked ahead. He could feel it, the transition, not abrupt, not dramatic, just a return. Danny exhaled slowly. Good, he said, but there was no relief in it, only acceptance. They passed the place where the distortion had been. It was gone. The air felt normal. The light behaved as it should. The world held together, and yet they were not the same within it. Tom rested his hand lightly against the window again, the glass steady beneath his fingers. Real. Outside, the horizon began to open again, the vastness returning. Behind them, nothing followed. Ahead, nothing waited, just road, just time, and whatever remained of it. They reached the ocean at dusk. Not the dramatic kind, the kind that demands attention, but a quieter arrival. The road opened, the air changed, and suddenly there it was, the Pacific, stretching outward in a muted grey-blue expanse, its surface catching the last light of the day. Vic pulled the car to a stop. No one said anything. They didn't need to. The engine went silent. The sound of the ocean took its place, low, steady, endless. Tom stepped out first. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of salt and distance. He walked a few steps toward the edge, stopping where the land gave way to sand and rock. Danny joined him. Vic stayed by the car for a moment longer. Then he too stepped out. Ray remained in the back seat, still, at rest. The sky was shifting, soft oranges fading into deeper blues, the horizon line blurring as day gave way to night. The light lingered just long enough to feel intentional, as if the world itself understood the need for a gentle ending. They stood side by side, not speaking, not remembering out loud. There was nothing left to explain. After a while, Danny exhaled slowly. "Well," he said. The word carried more than it needed to. Tom nodded. "Yeah." Vic looked out at the water. "We made it," he said. It wasn't triumphant, just factual. Danny gave a faint, almost absent smile. "Took us long enough?" Tom glanced back at the car, at Ray, then returned his gaze to the horizon. "Some things take time," he said. The waves rolled in, one after another, each one different, each one the same. Danny crossed his arms, then uncrossed them again. "You think it matters?" he asked. Tom looked at him. "What does?" Danny gestured vaguely at the road behind them, the ocean ahead, everything in between. All of it. Tom considered the question. Not quickly, not easily. Then, "I think it does, while you're carrying it," he said. Danny nodded slowly. "And after?" Tom looked back at the water, at the horizon that refused to stay still. "I think after, it just becomes part of you," he said. Vic didn't speak, but he understood. The light faded further. The first real stars began to appear. Time moved, quietly. After a while, Vic turned back toward the car. "We should," he began, then stopped. Danny followed his gaze. "Yeah," he said. Tom remained where he was for a moment longer. He watched the ocean, the endless motion. The wave erased its own edges over and over again. Then he turned. They opened the back door, carefully. Ray looked peaceful, not in a way that erased what had happened, but in a way that no longer resisted it. Danny adjusted the jacket again, though it didn't need it. Vic rested his hand briefly on the door. Tom stood closest. No words. They closed the door. The sound was soft, final, but not heavy. They would take care of what came next. That part belonged to the world beyond the road. For now, this was enough. They stood there a little longer. 3 men, At the end of a road they had once left unfinished, the wind moved gently across the shoreline. The waves continued their quiet rhythm. Nothing demanded meaning, nothing required explanation, and yet everything felt complete, not because it had been fixed, not because it had been resolved, but because it had been faced. Tom took a breath, deep, steady. He thought about the years behind them, the distance, the silence, the things they had carried without knowing, and the one thing they had finally allowed themselves to see. Beside him, Danny shifted slightly. Vic remained still. The three of them stood together, not as they had been, not as they once imagined they would be, but as they were, and that, finally, was enough. The last light faded from the horizon. The road behind them disappeared into memory. The ocean remained, and somewhere in the quiet space between what had been and what still was, time moved on